You're listening to the DGD Podcast,
sponsored by La Touraine.
Here's your hosts, Robert Reynolds and Juan Daniels.
Welcome to this episode of the DGD Podcast. As always, the NCDGD, Robert Reynolds, joined by Juan Daniels as well. And look, we've got two Oregon guys here. We're bringing in the enemy. We're going to get to understand Oregon. Look, we've got Reid and Charlie, which I think Juan just left us. So we'll be back when Juan pops in. Nonetheless, though, today's show is brought to you by La Touraine. Use code DGD at checkout to get 10% off of your purchase that is site-wide. With that being said, Reid, Charlie, welcome. I will let each of you introduce yourselves for the audience, per se. We'll let Charlie go first and then Reid.
Thank you very much. I'm Charlie. Reid and I have been doing the Quacked Out Podcast for, like 2 years now? Something like that?
Yeah, just about, yeah.
I go to U of O. I'm a senior. I was born and raised in Oregon, lifelong Oregon fan. We both write for Scoop Duck, the On3 Oregon site. And yeah, we're really excited to be here. And I also have a UGA connection too. I actually went to UGA for a semester. So I'm a little bit familiar with Athens and everything. Still got to get out to a game though, but yeah.
Fair enough. Reid, I'll let you take it over, man.
Yeah, I'm also born and raised in Portland, lifelong Ducks fan. Like Charlie said, both we've been doing this podcast for about 2 years, and then writing for the On3 site that Oregon has, which I encourage Georgia fans to go check out. It's a really great hub for Duck stuff. And yeah, I'm currently I attend Tulane University down in New Orleans, so I've got a little connection in the South too, and have enjoyed getting to know the football culture down here also.
Oh, I think your mic's disconnected, Robert.
Yeah, I can't hear you, Robert.
There we go, guys.
Yeah,
Welcome to technical difficulties. It's 2022.
Yeah.
So look, we've got some Louisiana ties. We've got some Oregon on the West Coast. Look, I'm just saying right here, obviously you look at what Oregon's done recently, and we're going to talk a little bit about Oregon here in just a second. Looking at going through a coaching change, right? There's a big deal going on right now. So what is Oregon going to be? And I feel like from a Georgia fan, look, we play September 3rd. So if you're listening and you're not aware and you've been hiding under a rock, I'm telling you, you've heard it here, right? We're playing September 3rd this year to open up the season in Atlanta, which we'll talk about more too. That being said, obviously, Cristobal during the offseason goes back to Miami. And then that leaves y'all head coach, then you get Lanning. What were y'all's thoughts when you picked up Dan Lanning?
I can go first. I think the important thing to know about Oregon is that our coaching staff was, how we built this program was with this family coaching staff that had continuity basically for 30 years, from the 80s all the way through 2015. Then we lose Helfrich and we step into the unknown. We go with Taggart. He leaves us after 1 year. And then we had Mario leave us after 4 years. So I think there was a lot of worry from the Ducks fans about, how do we get someone who doesn't have ties to the program, and how long are they going to stay here when they come? So there's a lot of fear when Cristobal first left, but I think that the starting of the Lanning era has been really positive for Ducks fans for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were just relieved when we got Lanning. There was a lot of drama, and I know Reid was kind of, it's hard to directly address this, but I mean, there was a really big and really impactful and important rumor surrounding the Oregon head coaching search, that we were going after a guy like Chip Kelly, guy who's been here before, had success here before, but hasn't really succeeded at UCLA. Not really the type of profile like you're looking for a top guy. Same goes for Josh Wilcox, and you might not even know who that is, and I wouldn't blame you. He's the head coach at Cal. Has been there for quite a while now. Great defensive mind, great coach, but again, hasn't had success at Cal. How is he going to cut it at a big program like Oregon? The rumors are that Wilcox turned down the Oregon job. So a lot of Oregon fans we have trouble kind of dealing with those two things. So at the end of the day, I mean, to get a guy like Lanning, who's obviously one of the best coordinators in the country and was leading one of the best defenses of all time, I mean, I was hyped for it. Again, just kind of having somebody be our head coach was enough for me at this point. And the fact that we got somebody I could actually be confident in was another step in the right direction.
So the Cal head coach reportedly turned the Oregon job down?
Yeah, that's the report.
What in the blue hell made that decision? I'm sorry. Like, my thing is, if I'm the Cal head coach, unless I legitimately just love Cal, Oregon's a way better step up for me. Like, just based off of, you look at production, you look at recruiting, right? I know Cal is in California, and California seems to be a hot spot. But let's be honest, no elite recruit outside of what Deshaun back. This ain't the Marshawn Lynch. This ain't the Deshaun Jackson days. Nobody wants to go to Cal that's an elite talent. So Oregon, you're automatically going to get that, name recognition, brand recognition. Everybody knows Phil Knight and Nike, like that, just no brainer. So the fact that I just heard that is just mind-boggling to me. It really is
very odd. Yeah, I mean, there's been some theories, like we've thrown out a theory that like maybe Oregon just lowballed him because there was this other issue, I guess you would say, where a bunch of former Oregon players, Reid was talking about this continuity they had on the staff for a long time. These former Oregon players get together, about 13, 14 of them. They draft this letter to the athletic department and the AD. And it basically says like, hey, we need to bring back some like true Oregon cultural aspects to this program. Like we're a program, we're not a stepping stone program. We need to like bring in some more Oregon flavor to this thing. And indirectly or not, a lot of those people were calling for Wilcox to get the head coach. He is an Oregon alum. He played at Oregon on a Rose Bowl team. Very important in terms of the history of the program. But overall, still people are like, really? Is this really the guy we want taking over this recruiting behemoth that Mario's just built? So yeah, it was a really odd time, and we still really don't know exactly how this all played out.
Yeah, I would just quickly plug. I did an interview with Joey Harrington, who was the Oregon quarterback in 2001. He was a Heisman finalist. That's episode 67 on our Quacked Out Podcast feed. If Georgia fans want to know about kind of the identity of the Oregon program and what makes this program unique, I would really highly recommend that podcast. Joey has a lot of insight about this program, so it's a good listen.
Juan, I'm gonna let you speak a little bit about this. From our standpoint, when Lanning goes, what were your thoughts?
Well, first of all, if you actually look at the dynamic of college football for the last couple of years, the teams that really dominate are those that have great defenses. And so you take a Lanning who had probably the best defense in the nation, hands down. But you go back, Kirby Smart, a defensive guy, Nick Saban, a defensive guy. You take a look at Venables, a huge defensive guy, the reason that Clemson won it. So I thought right then, man, that's going to be tough. And then coming out and playing Oregon that first game, Lanning knows how to stop Georgia. Alabama had the recipe that first in the SEC championship, but you can best believe that Lanning knows how to stop Georgia. He knows the ins and outs. He knows how to defend that running game. He knows how to defend that passing game. So for him to go out there, also to be a great recruiter like he is, who wouldn't want to play for Lanning? And then, of course, if you look at 24/7 Sports, Oregon has the top facility in the nation. I mean, it's beautiful. It's amazing. So you get a great coach in Lanning, great recruiter, and then you go to Oregon, and Oregon is rich in history. I mean, if you really think about it, even going back to when they had an opportunity to play Auburn in that national championship, I mean, that really just kind of put them on the map, and they have from a recruiting standpoint from, hey, I want to go to Oregon type thing. You know, my son, who is going to Stanford, would have loved to have gotten an opportunity to go play at Oregon. Heck, he was just wanting to go just for the uniforms, you know, by itself, let alone anything that. But when I knew that Lanning was going, and of course he was a hot commodity, I was thinking to myself, wow, he's going to go out there and pretty much change the Pac-12 and how things are going. Because I don't necessarily think the Pac-12 has always been known for defense, and then having those recruits and whatever he's going to do some great things with Cristobal's group that he recruited in there. So I was like, wow, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough.
Real quick, I have a question for you guys, actually. I'm wondering, like, was Lanning considered for any other, like, jobs around the country? Because I wasn't really hearing his name on the job mill until
not that I know of. I hadn't really heard anything, but again, once you have that top defense in the nation, it was almost as if he could just go wherever he wanted to, with that coaching carousel. But I do think that Oregon was probably his top choice, even if he did have some. But I agree with you guys when you just talk about that whole family thing, because if you look at Georgia has Georgia guys coaching at Georgia. So you've got Kirby Smart, who is a diehard Georgia guy. He's home. And then he's bringing other guys that are just home guys. And so, when you just talk about, with that interview with Joey Harrington, I'm excited to go back and listen to it. But when you've got guys that have been to Oregon, and they coached there, they've played there, that it's going to be that hometown feel, and they're going to be all in 100%. And that's how Georgia is this year. They are 100% all in. And so you don't have to worry about Kirby looking elsewhere to go coach anywhere else.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. But unfortunately, I would also say, Oregon doesn't have the same tradition of coaching tree that Georgia has. I mean, there isn't a Kirby Smart that is an Oregon alum, that's a top 5 at least head coach in college football that went to Oregon, So
right.
Yeah, it's a tough push and pull because you want people who understand the program, who are motivated to work hard for it. But at the same time, you can't compromise and get a lower tier head coach if you want to compete nationally. So that was a push and pull during the whole coaching cycle for Ducks fans. And I think we're all really happy that it ended up with Lanning, even though behind the scenes and the offer to the Cal coach, we were a little worried about. Ultimately, how it shook out, we were really excited with.
I will say this with, when Lanning left, right? I think Georgia fans knew it was coming. And last year, we thought that it would be, his time. Nothing really materialized. And, I think the only one that I'm aware of was Kansas job, right? Nobody wants the Kansas job. Like you have to be a brave soul to take the Kansas job.
Except for the Fighting Manginos, right?
Oh my! Look! I'll tell you what. Beating Texas, guys, that right there is going to bring some recruits in. I'm just saying. But nonetheless, look. So obviously, I can't blame him for not taking the Kansas job when you're at a premier university and you're the defensive coordinator on one of the best defenses arguably in the country. So at the time, we're like, all right, awesome, another year. Let's run it back, win our national title. Next thing you know, this year is the coaching carousel of doom for everybody, started by Lincoln Riley out west, which we'll talk a little bit about here because, Oregon plays USC, not this year, but I think, you could see them in the Pac-12 championship. So obviously that coaching carousel starts, and then Cristobal, in my opinion, look, the way Miami handled the Cristobal situation was shady as shit. Like, I'm just being honest. But nonetheless, what happens. I mean, it is what it is. So, Cristobal goes home, and then, obviously when y'all pick up Lanning, I'm happy for him. I really am. Kind of looking at the same situation as Kirby, really, if you think about it. Kirby has a DC job at Alabama, comes head coach at Georgia. The rest is history, right, guys? Thing about it is when I'm looking at it, you give Dan Lanning, and I'd say a top tier program. I don't know about the upper echelon like your Georgias and Bamas, but you're right there. that's a great first head coaching job to get, especially that's a resume booster if I've ever seen one. So for me, I'm extremely happy for Dan Lanning, and I know what he can do. And there's 2 guys on your roster right now that I know are going to benefit from having him as your head coach. And those 2 guys, we've recruited them and almost had them, Justin Flo and Noah Sewell. Those 2 guys right there, when we play September 3rd, I'm nervous for those guys because those guys are good as hell anyway. When you get Lanning that has a track record for putting guys in the NFL, especially at linebackers, watch out. Watch out.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we've been gassing up those names the last 2 years now. Unfortunately, Flo's had to deal with some injuries and hasn't really seen the field at all, essentially. But I mean, Sewell's a monster, man. Like, even in that 2020 season, for us, it was super shortened. For you guys, it was a little bit shortened. I mean, he was just flying. He was everywhere. The man was an animal. And he still is. I mean, you guys, I'm sure, saw enough of the Ohio State game and whatnot. Whatever other Oregon stuff you can catch throughout the year before it's, past your bedtime. I understand how it gets.
We're some old folks, so bedtime. Yeah. Look, we were struggling when we won the national championship. Juan knows the story.
I took a nap before that. I took a nap that day. So.
Look, I went into work the next day and I drank 6 cups of coffee. I was that tired, but I was wired from the win. I'm not gonna lie. But look, and to me, I like watching Oregon football when I'm able to see them. The thing about being on the East Coast is the time zone difference, right? Your prime time is our bedtime. So a lot of Georgia fans and a lot of folks don't really watch Pac-12 football because of this is a time zone. Now, there's sometimes when it's a Saturday and I'm sitting up till 1 o'clock watching football, fine. But at the same time, this is why I love having guys on, because we're starting to understand what Oregon is about, because we don't get to watch them that much. So,
and when you do, when you do watch those Pac-12 after dark games, it's hard to keep track of what's going on a lot of the time. It's these games are notorious for just being, and this conference is notorious for being just as chaotic as possible. The only way I'll put it is like Bo Nix is built for this. That's why I'm not that worried. But
yeah.
No.
It's funny because again, you have Stanford that'll go and upset a number 5 Oregon team, and then they go on a 7-game losing streak, and then it's not just a 7-game losing streak. I mean, they're getting blown out by all of these teams. But one thing I love about Lanning being there, and really, and even when you look at USC, is you got coaches now that are going to make the Pac-12 relevant. I mean, it hasn't really been, since the USC national championship, and when they just completely dominated college football. And you had had some chances, Oregon playing in the national championship. Twice when they played Ohio State. They also played Auburn. But now, you're going to have that steady, competition to make the Pac-12 big time again, because the Pac-12 has been down. And I know Robert said something, in regards to it being a stepping stone, but I don't look at it as a stepping stone. I think Lanning is going to be there for a while, and he has an intention on making Oregon great. And then once he gets to that point, and then it's, if they become a machine, look out, because he's going to continue to get those defensive guys in there, and then of course, who's y'all's offensive coordinator? I don't know.
Dillingham.
It's Kenny Dillingham, who they know from they worked under Norvell at Memphis, and Dillingham's basically Norvell's right hand man. He brought Dillingham over to Florida State when he got that job, but Lanning has that connection with him way back, and so he was the guy that he wanted to run the offense.
Okay. Is it a high-powered? Was he a high-powered offensive guy?
Built on explosive plays. Yeah, it's not like every down going crazy, but it's mainly based on creating explosive plays and mismatches. And he also coached Nix during Nix's freshman season at Auburn. Yeah, so there's the connection there.
And you're right. Nix is a wild card. I really do believe that if Nix played against Alabama, Auburn wins that game. I really do. You unfortunately had a TJ Finley he's basically a statue.
And he was hurt
can throw
too
the ball
that
down the
game, too.
field, but he's not running anywhere. I mean, he's just not. But yeah, so but Bo Nix is he's a competitor. He's got fire. You just never know what you're going to get.
The crazy thing about it too, like, looking at Nix, and Nix hasn't had the best track record with Georgia. But when you take him out of the SEC, and honestly, I think, the offensive line at Auburn, which looked that dumpster fire of a program, put him in Oregon. I think you're going to see a better protection. He's not going to have to do the stupid, crazy type plays, just to stay alive, right? Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. But you also, it's going to be interesting to see like your quarterback, because right now I think with spring camp looming, right, we just don't know. It could be assumed that he has an upper hand, but we just don't know. Obviously Robbie Ashford leaving kind of stings a little bit. That was a name that I was looking at Georgia, but I think we just had Gunner in our hands and or Brockett at that point. So, but now Robbie's a good quarterback, and him leaving kind of stings. But I think you replace that with Bo, and it's just like, okay, Bo has his ups and his downs, just like about anybody. But, how will he fit in Dillingham's system, right? I think that's the question. And honestly, looking at the offense, right? Because we know Lanning's going to have his hands on the defense. I'm not worried about the defense in regards to what it's going to look like. I'm more worried about the offense because I just don't know, because I know with running backs, you got Jordan James, which obviously recruiting y'all flipped from Georgia on signing day, which is a really good running back. And luckily Georgia was able to replace him. Nonetheless, though, I know what Jordan's about, and he's going to be really good in the Pac-12. Has the potential to be. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think my main concern is what the offense is going to look like when we play September 3rd, right? Because obviously everybody's staying healthy, things like this, that's going to play a part. But, all things staying equal currently, right, it's going to be quite interesting to see. I think Bo Nix would have a better shot at staying upright and making better plays if he's not running for his life like he was at Auburn. Juan, Auburn, to hell with him.
Patrick asked real quick, he's like, Oregon guys, what do you think Nix's biggest benefit will be for you guys?
Well, I would say, we just went through a season with Anthony Brown at quarterback, and there was a lot of debate and just a lot of Oregon fans were upset with his level of play, I think. And so Bo Nix raises the floor of the quarterback room immediately. I don't think it's his job 100%. You look at what Dillingham did at Florida State. He took Jordan Travis, who was a guy who was in the program, and played him over the transfer that Florida State brought in. And we have two quarterbacks in the program who are high 4-stars, 5-star guys. So I don't think it's, a lock that Bo Nix is the quarterback, but if he's that guy, I think, he has improvisation skills for sure. He can throw a better ball than Anthony Brown. And he's just a good leader too. He's a great locker room guy from all accounts. How he handled the situation with Finley at Auburn, I think was pretty impressive. So I'm excited if he comes in and he does get the job. But, ultimately it's kind of a holdover quarterback probably for a year until we can get someone that we develop an in-program guy in there after that too.
Yeah, you also look at what Oregon's about to be trying to do for the 23 class, right? The 2022 class just finished up. And there's a kid, quarterback Nico. I'm not butchering his last name.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not
California
either. Yeah.
Yeah, no, like for his respect, right? For respect of the kid, I'm not butchering that last name because it's a hard one to say. But Nico, keep in mind Nico, the quarterback out of California, 5-star quarterback, and Oregon has a really good shot at landing him. The potential to play out in the SEC. You look, California, Bama, Georgia has had success pulling those out with USC being down. It's going to be interesting to see how Lincoln handles, recruiting the state, right? He's actually for 23 class, he's well on his way to kind of securing that elite talent. But nonetheless, Nico has a good chance to leave in the state. So I think honestly, he might actually go to Oregon, depending on how I think. Well, yeah, I know definitely for y'all because the kid's a good talent. If you watch him, definitely watch his tape. You'll see what I'm talking about from junior highlights. But with that being said, though, you look at what Oregon's about, right? And let's be honest, when it comes to recruiting, Dan Lanning, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of footprint he has, because he has the SEC ties, right? He's got SEC ties, he's got Midwest ties. How does that play, right? Can he go nationally? I think, looking at, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but Oregon has kind of been known to kind of get maybe one or two guys out of like Florida, things like that, but they focused in picking and rating California. Utah's become a hot spot, and then obviously Seattle area pulling from those Huskies. You know who I'm talking about. Exactly, right? Juan knows. But now look, so my question to you guys is this. What are your thoughts on, from a recruiting standpoint, what Lanning will bring to the Oregon program? My thoughts are he can bring it nationally, but what are your expectations? What are your thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, I'm a big recruiting guy, so I can touch on this. I love to talk about it. I think there's a little bit of a misconception about how much Oregon raids Southern California, because really what happened was the 2019 class, Mario's first full class, Oregon lived in Southern California. They got Kayvon from there. They got this guy Mace Spuna from there. Mikhail Wright, who's another really good player. But then Oregon lost their cornerback coach to Southern California. His name's Dante Williams. And he basically has the key to LA, people say. He's the best recruiter in Southern California. So Oregon had to pivot a bit. And we saw in their 2021 class, they pivot to some states like Utah, Arizona, Washington. They also, in California, focused a little more on Northern California. And then San Diego is kind of a pipeline, because San Diego has some tension with LA, and some of those kids like to go out of the state. But also, nationally, Oregon gets guys from Baltimore. They get guys from Nebraska. It's a program that has a really good footprint. Texas was a big priority in this last class. It didn't materialize in the end, but Oregon got a commitment from Kelvin Banks in the summer, a 5-star offensive tackle. That was probably the biggest national commitment Oregon's ever landed. And with Cristobal moving on, him being an offensive line guy, he ended up staying home and going to Texas. But Oregon has, a national reach in terms of its brand. Absolutely. I think that there isn't a limit on where you can go. And especially, when you want to recruit the trenches, you're going to have to get out of the Pac-12 footprint a bit. You can load up on receivers and cornerbacks in California and get really good ones. But if you want to get, the big guys that control games, you're going to have to get out of the West Coast footprint a bit.
And that's a lesson we learned under Mario too, right? I mean, you look at guys like Jordan Scott was a, 4-year starter basically at nose tackle for us, 3-star out of Florida. But his body was so huge. I mean, that's just a guy you don't see in the Pac-12. Brandon Dorales, another example, one of our current defensive tackles. He's an amazing player. Another 3-star out of Florida. Again, that's a lesson we learned under Mario. With Taggart a little bit, but with only one season, we didn't even really get a full class with him or anything. But Mario showed us that, yeah, we don't have to just rely on California for talent. We can go out and get guys from, again, whether it's Florida, down in the South, we haven't really recruited the Midwest, but I mean, out East, on the East Coast, we got guys coming from New York, like Seven McGee, all over the map. But I will say one thing on the California comment, I mean, when you talk about guys leaving in state, that holds a lot more weight down south when there's, strict regionality is a much bigger issue, states are more, there's more states that care about football down in the South. Oregon's essentially California. A lot of people even call Oregon UC Eugene, University of California, Eugene, because there's a lot of Californians here just in the student body. And I mean, in general, a lot of Californians move here. So it's not as big a deal, I would say, for even say a guy from, I don't know, North Carolina coming down to Florida or vice versa. Right. It's definitely not even that big of a jump from California to Oregon for a lot of these guys.
Interesting to know, because I think, Juan, you know how this goes, especially in states like Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, staying home is massive, right? So it's interesting to see how you kind of look at the South. I don't even know if you want to consider it the East Coast, because like up north, you kind of see guys from like Pennsylvania going to Michigan or Ohio, things like that, right? But definitely in the South, you
froze a little bit again, but I think I understand what you're saying.
yeah, the guys, like, it's just wild how that works. Look, so, obviously Patrick says, so if Lanning wins a chip with the Ducks, do we get to say built by Georgia like the Low Tide is doing with Kirby? That's more for Juan.
Right, yeah. But you know what's funny, though, is well, it's not funny, but Lanning has basically opened up recruiting nationwide for Oregon. And so now Lanning has experienced the Southern recruits. He's, like you said, he's got ties in the Midwest. Now he's going to go and start recruiting the Californians and then the Washingtons. But you know, what kid would not want to go play for a coach that, you know, has just won a national championship? And I don't care how you look at it, the defense won that national championship. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And then, of course, you know, with Jamison Williams going down, I already knew, hey, it's lights out. All Georgia has to do is just score one more time, and that's going to be it. But again, if I'm a kid, especially if I'm a defensive guy, yeah, I want to be a part of something. Everybody's going to want to be that first recruiting class. And so, you know, you look at Saban, when he first started at Alabama, they said since 2007, every single recruit that he's had has won a national championship at some point in time in their years. That's crazy. But think about that first recruiting class that could say, yeah, man, we started that whole thing that took place. Why would you not want to be a part of something like that with a national championship defensive coach? I mean, and you know, he's opened that up. There's going to be guys now that probably did not consider Oregon, not even consider the West Coast, that are now going to be like, man, yeah, I want to go out there and play. And then another thing too for Lanning, he's just going to say, hey, listen, just come out and see the facilities, man. Go and compare. Again, 24/7 says it's the number one. Just come out here and just take a look. You don't have to, you know, you may not even be interested. I can guarantee when they leave, they're going to leave with a different type of perspective when it actually comes to Oregon. And again, to Lanning and his coaching style.
Definitely. And that's always been our thing at Oregon, is like having the nicest stuff. We didn't have the rich history, you know, Reid and I can tell you, like, our lifetimes, so we were both born in 2000, like that is pretty much almost all of Oregon's success has happened within our lifetimes. And for recruiting purposes, that's great, but you know, it doesn't exactly fill the trophy cabinet.
Right.
So we had to find other ways to get guys to come here. Phil Knight obviously is the main reason behind that. And I mean, his money is pretty much taken us to where we are now. But that was always our thing, man. We had to lean on facilities. We had to lean on the uniforms and the flashy offense. And well, I guess the offense just kind of helped. But the success really is all in the past like 20 years.
So I want to ask y'all one question. Obviously, before we'll wrap things up, and then we'll stick around for a Q&A if you'd like, guys. My question to you, September 3rd in Atlanta. Big game, right? You know, you look at Patrick said earlier, teacher versus student, really. You know, so what are your expectations with that game? You don't have to give me a score prediction. Just kind of like, you know, what are your expectations for what you want to see Oregon do come September 3rd?
You want to start, Charlie?
Yeah, sure. I don't want to get killed. I have a very similar attitude to this game as I did with the Ohio State game last year. And yeah, sure, we ended up winning that. But I mean, we were anywhere from like 14 to 17 point underdogs is when that game finally did kick off. I have a hard time. And again, same with the Ohio State game. Oregon's biggest issues were in the secondary. We all know where Ohio State's talent lied in that team. I was scared for my life for that game. If I'm being realistic, like right now, I don't really see a path to Oregon like winning this. I can't see a realistic path to me saying like Oregon will win because of this. You know, it's just going to have to be like some facet of the team is going to have to step up and outperform my expectations. In Columbus, it was the secondary. and quarterback play, to be honest. And really the offensive line, really every position group. Now I'm talking about it, but
Yeah, we needed everyone.
I mean,
it's going to be all hands on deck.
Too. Yeah, especially traveling to the shoe. Yeah.
And
that was a big deal.
Overlooked part of it. That was a 9 a.m. game for those guys. I mean, yeah, sure, it was noon for everybody else, but I mean, for talk about body clocks, stuff like that. Like they were travel across the country, and you got to wake up and play a high-level football game at 9 a.m. I could barely get up in time for the game to watch it on TV.
If you've got kids, you're up.
Well, yeah. But yeah, so Reid, I'm interested to see what you think too, because I haven't really even started digging into position battles and stuff like that. But just in general, I mean, you go up against a team with the caliber of talent Georgia has across the board. Like, sure, I know you got a lot of guys leaving, but it's it's a lot easier to replace that talent when you're recruiting at a Saban-like level every season.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of comparisons to the Ohio State game because we went through the same process for the whole offseason, wondering how we could compete there. And yeah, I mean, it's a little different. I think I was especially scared versus Ohio State because of their offense. They're a team that if you don't show up, they're going to beat you by, 50 probably. And I think Georgia having, a little bit more conservative style with Kirby. I think that even if we get dominated, hopefully it still stays within, 20 or 30 points. But I also think, Oregon has a chance here. They got a bunch of guys who want to compete. I mean, you talk about a guy like Noah Sewell. That was a great battle that Oregon had against Georgia for him on the recruiting trail, and Oregon won that one. Same with Dante Manning as a cornerback. Who y'all might remember recruiting well. So in terms of the styles, I mean, Georgia just won a national title, right? So it's a pretty tough game for us, but I think you hope that Oregon can kind of air it out. I think if Georgia does have a weakness on their team, or at least last year on their defense, the secondary at times was the place. And so we got some young receivers who are talented coming in. You kind of hope that you can follow that game plan. But, I mean, ultimately, it's going to be a test in the trenches, really. I think you're going to see early on, can Oregon get a push or not? And if Georgia's consistently knocking us back a yard or two on the line of scrimmage, it's going to be a long day, right?
And I'm glad you brought that up, Reid, real quick. Sorry. That's a lesson we learned from Ohio State game. I mean, coming up under Chip Kelly, like, yeah, sure, Oregon had some insanely good teams, but we couldn't really compete in the trenches with SEC teams. Got blown out by LSU in 2011. And then that Auburn game, the game before, Nick Fairley kind of took us to lunch.
Nick Fairley took a lot of people to lunch.
Yeah. But especially Pac-12 offensive linemen. Again, though, that's something we got better at under Cristobal is we were able – I mean, you look back at the tape of that game in Columbus, and I know we keep referencing it, but it's just too perfect of a metaphor against this Georgia game. Oregon did compete in the trenches. And I mean, yeah, sure, that's a big-time program that you're going up against. Those are big-time players, like Paris Johnson, that entire Haskell Garrett defensive line, everybody, like those guys were real. And the fact that Oregon was able to push them around, not at will, but I mean, we never trailed in that game. We kind of controlled it. That showed us a lot, and it showed the rest of the country that, like, hey, it is possible for a Pac-12 program to get these bodies and to get these guys ready for this type of game in the trenches.
Juan, I want to hear what you have to say. What you think Georgia has to do to win this game? Obviously, like I said, we'll stick with we'll let the brigade deal with the score predictions. But what are your expectations for Georgia to come in riding off that natty?
Well, first and foremost, this is kind of similarly eerie to our first podcast last year when we were talking about Clemson. What I don't love is giving Lanning all these months to prepare. And that was my issue with Venables. Venables had so much time, even though I think athletically we were much better than Clemson. It was a struggle. And of course, it was just a defensive, but that was all Venables. All Venables, he had all that time. And so now you've got Lanning that's got all of this time. It's not like they have a tough game before, and then they're going to play us next time. I mean, it is going to be, I think it's going to be the same type of situation next year. Venables is he's not going to get blown out. He's going to have a defensive plan ready. It's just going to be a matter of those guys executing. I think that what Georgia will have to do is just keep pounding and then give themselves an opportunity to win it in the fourth quarter, or like Tripp said, just kind of win the turnover battle and just give us some great field position. But, Lanning scares me, just like Venables. And sure enough, it was a 10-3 game. I mean, it was awful.
Offensively, it was terrible.
Offensively, it was terrible. So, and I would expect the same thing. I would expect the same thing this year. Is offensively, we're not going to be able to do all the things that we want to do. We're just going to have to just come up with some plays and make some plays versus Lanning.
Yeah, Lanning, in my opinion, Juan, Lanning being under Kirby for so long, he knows the offense. He knows that. Look, they went up against him every single day. It's going to be a chess match. We thought Clemson and Clemson game. We thought the Bama game was going to be a chess match. Oregon game is going to be just the same. I think the question is, can Oregon stop Georgia's blueprint? Because I think that Georgia's going to try to do the same thing that we did last year. Can Oregon stop it? Do they have the depth is the key there. I know they've got bodies. I know they've got talent. But do they have the depth to ride the storm? Because Georgia can go, they wear you down, and by the fourth quarter when you're gassed, Georgia's still fresh. That's the key. And can Lanning get these guys ready? Do they have the depth, the talent, and the depth to stop Georgia? Because in the fourth quarter, we saw this with Clemson. We saw this with Bama in the national title game from start to finish. In the fourth quarter, the offensive line just mauled people. Even some of the best defensive lines in the country pushed them, asserted their dominance, broke their will, and won the game. Can Oregon stop that? I think that's the key. And there's really, in my opinion, no other shot here better than Dan Lanning, because he just has that much knowledge of Kirby Smart's offense. Not saying that, and look, Venables isn't a damn good defensive coordinator. And Juan is exactly right. You give him that much time. We saw the problems. We saw our offense struggle. A lot of people thought this game was going to be high scoring. Me included. I thought it was going to be at least some scoring. Didn't realize a pick six was going to be the game winner. So when you have both offenses in that game completely shut down, that's the kind of chess match it is. Whether it's Bo Nix, whether it's whoever, and whether it's Stetson, whether it's Carson, Brock, whoever. You got to limit the turnovers, and you got to ride the wave, because it's coming, right? I expect Sewell and I expect Flo to have a good game. I just do. You said it in the trenches. Yeah. Well, yeah. Look at it this way: the trenches is going to matter, but I think the depth for Georgia. Can we just pound it? Can we do that again? I think ultimately you do see that. But it's not going to. I don't think it's going to be a traditional just an ass whipping. I think it'll be a lot closer. I think it'll maybe 10 points, just way too early. But I still think that's the key. Is does Oregon have the depth? Do they? I think that's the main question.
Yeah, on that point, I think it was pretty interesting to me that this was a class for Oregon in recruiting that was really tight in scholarship numbers. We were pushing up against that 85 limit already. And still Lanning prioritized getting 2 transfer defensive linemen into Oregon to add depth. And now I think, you look at this group, it's about 6 deep with guys that we feel really comfortable playing on the D line, on the interior there, and a few more obviously on the edge. But that was a big thing. We picked up a full-time starter from Washington, and then we picked up a guy who our defensive line coach had worked with at Nebraska before. So it definitely seemed like he recognized that that battle on the defensive line and having depth there was going to be important against Georgia.
Absolutely. Look, I think it's going to be a good game in Atlanta. I expect Georgia to probably at 80-20. Look, Atlanta is Athens Part 2. Basically, we know this.
Right.
But also, I know Oregon travels well. There's some Oregon fans in the Atlanta area too. It's Metro Atlanta, right? We know this. With that being said, though, guys, look, thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking Oregon, getting us dog fans acclimated to what Oregon is about. If you're not super familiar with it, and then kind of getting a feel for, how life with Lanning is, at least from the expectations and so far what y'all have seen. So like I said, thanks for coming on and giving us that insight. With that being said, Reid, I'll let you go first. And Charlie, hey, where can people find you if they want to take a look at your podcast and your work?
Yeah, so you can go to scoopduck.com is the On3 site for Oregon. I do a lot of recruiting stuff there. Charlie does some more team stuff with football and basketball. And then my Twitter is MF_Reid. Our podcast Twitter is @DucksPod, or you can search Quacked Out Podcast on Apple, Spotify, all the normal ones. Those are the main places you can check us out. And Charlie, you go ahead too.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. I'm trying to think of bases that weren't covered. I don't know. But yeah, it's pleasure being on with you guys.
Note to self, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
No, but hey, look, guys, like I said, thanks again. Feel free to stick around. We got a Q&A coming up. This will end the audio podcast portion. With that, though, guys, have a great weekend and go Dogs.
Thanks for listening to the DGD Podcast. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and to the DGD Podcast YouTube channel, where you can watch live Mondays and Fridays at noon Eastern. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at the DGD Podcast. And check out the website at www.dgdpodcast.com.
And we're back for those folks on video. All right, Brigade, look, got about 5 minutes. Shoot us some questions. Oregon fans, if you're in the weeds, shoot us some questions. But until then, I think it's going to be interesting here to see, Reid, or we'll let the guests figure out what are y'all most interested about. Are you interested in anything Georgia related, or I know I have some questions that I have, for Oregon. I know Reid, you mentioned you're pretty heavy in recruiting. Maybe this will be a good way to start. Juan, your son's going to Stanford.
Yeah.
Are you going to Eugene when they play?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to. I want to experience what it's like to actually go to an Oregon game. Just to have that. Plus, my bucket list is to visit all 50 states. So I've been to Washington, I've been to California, I've never been to Oregon. So it's a perfect time for me to go there. I also get a chance to go to Utah. But that was always been one of the things that I've always wanted to do, was to go to an Oregon game. I heard it's live, it's exciting, it's cool. So, it's going to be a little different because I know that they want some payback from last year. So we'll see.
That. Yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we don't do too hot against Stanford historically.
Yeah,
that's the crazy thing, man. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, it was weird, Joe. So hey, thanks, Trip. I appreciate it, man. I definitely am a proud dad. So I'm excited to really follow Pac-12 football. I just haven't since the Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart days. And then, of course, I was a huge Marcus Mariota fan with that group. So just kind of glad to be just kind of reunited with the Pac-12 and excited to watch some Pac-12 football.
One of the things that really intrigues me, and I need to know this, and I'm not going to get too political here, but the Pac-12, the COVID situation, are the stadiums and the capacities, are they impacted, or like how is that going on? Like what's that recently looking like?
Not anymore.
Not
anymore.
No.
Yeah.
So there's full capacity now.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's completely full. And it has been for the entire past season. I mean, you talk about places like the Bay Area, Stanford and Cal. I mean, they won't be filling the stadiums anyways.
We knew that, but
I didn't know. I think they might have had some restrictions. Cal was the only program in FBS college football last year that had serious COVID issues. There was a big it was such a mess, but essentially Cal ended up losing to Arizona, who was previously winless. because they were
garbage,
missing.
by the way.
Yes, Cal was missing about half their team in that game. Yeah, it was. That's the thing about the Pac-12, man. Like, Pac-12 will always get some crazy, like, funny, entertaining stuff happening. I just can't promise it'll be the best quality all the time. But hopefully that'll change with big recruiters coming in.
Yeah,
I think that's the interesting thing for me is because I think you don't watch enough college football that you start to see this notion of, the West Coast and the Pac-12 still having these issues. And with that, I think, last season, like you said, there was full capacity. So it's interesting to see how that plays out now because, now that we know that, you look at Autzen, which I think is one of the loudest stadiums, studies or, I don't know, like polls or something have said that. Like, is that how loud is it there?
Definitely.
Yeah. Autzen's packed on top of each other. The architecture of it, even though it's not the biggest stadium, something about it just keeps the noise in. And so, especially in the big games, I mean, it's as loud as a lot of places get. It might not be Death Valley at LSU or some of those big SEC stadiums, but it gets really loud, especially when it's a big game, for sure. I mean, we've had a few iconic ones in our time. 2009 USC is kind of a game that Oregon flipped the West Coast narrative a lot, and that's regarded commonly as like the loudest game Oregon's had.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it can get to like you're standing next to somebody and you won't be able to like speak to each other. Again, I haven't been to a game at Stanford yet, but I mean, just being on that campus and seeing the size of it, I assume it can get pretty similar down there too.
That's awesome. I see Joel says, Juan, hopefully you'll miss those Utah snow showers during your games here. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Utah and BYU's stadium have probably the prettiest backgrounds I've ever seen in my life. So,
Colorado too. Yeah, those.
Oh, it's Colorado.
Look, being from North Carolina, I'll tell you right now, App State. If you ever get a chance in the fall time, like mid-October, early November, just go Google image App State's football stadium and their baseball stadium, by the way. Being in Boone and in the mountains there, that right there, if Georgia could give me that, holy shit. That's all I'm going to say. Holy shit.
Yeah, man, that stuff is
It is
beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, and that's kind of similar to how Oregon Stadium is. Autzen is not, again, I went to UGA. I know Stanford, sorry. I've been talking about Stanford too much. Stanford is literally in the middle of campus. Like the campus is built around the stadium. That's not the case here. Over here, it's like, it's you walk across the river and through the woods, quite literally. And then Autzen just kind of opens up outside the trees. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow.
So it's a lot more of like it's a more intimate feel. You're a little bit more isolated. Again, you're literally in the woods. And it is, capacity is under 60,000, and yet the passion from the fans make it louder.
I think the engineering in that stadium is what makes it so loud, right? Like the way
the architect
did
some hit about it.
Because you look at Seattle Stadium, Seattle Seahawks Stadium, like it has about the same capacity or right around there, and it's just like deafening almost. Like I'll tell you right now, Juan, I think you've played. Did you ever play at LSU?
No, but I heard it was a nightmare.
Man, I've just watched some of those games, and this ain't even in the state. Like I'm at the TV. Just like Death Valley in Baton Rouge is it has to be the loudest place in the country. Like it's just like earthquakes happen there, like legitimate earthquakes happen. But no, I've heard Autzen is wild in that regards, and being loud. So Juan, you've got your hands, you've got your work cut out for you when you go there, man.
I just want to see the stadium, man. Win or lose, I just want to, to just say I was there.
It's funny that you mentioned that Stanford game though, because I'm a senior now. My freshman year here, so 3 years ago, the first game that I went to on campus was that Stanford game where Oregon blows the late lead. It's on college game day was there. It was the whole 9 yards. and Oregon lost that game. That's the last game Oregon has lost in Autzen Stadium.
Corso, man, Corso can legitimately curse your team from a fan science standpoint. He
loves the Ducks too.
Oh my! The bad part was
he does.
He does. But the thing about it was when he predicted Georgia to win the national, I was like, oh no, don't you? No. Like, don't do that. And
especially after the whole that dog is ugly quote. Like that's one of the most iconic game day ones.
No, you got so Tripp here going for Juan here. He can hear Larry talking about Larry Munson. If you are not familiar, he's probably one of the most iconic Georgia figures. Period. Just the voice of the Dogs. I know we got Scott Howard. No disrespect, but Larry Munson's going to be up there on his own pedestal. But Tripp says he can hear Larry calling Juan's name now. It just seems like yesterday.
It does. It was, he's just an amazing guy just to listen to, and I remember, even after leaving Georgia, I would turn the TV down and then just, turn the radio up and just listen to him. He's the only person that can make a 3-yard gain sound like it's like you're coming back and like run Lindsey run. It's just amazing. He's like running, tackling, bumbling, stumbling, pushing, driving for a 3-yard gain. But it was so exciting that you just wanted to be like, ah!
The funny thing about it was, for me growing up in North Carolina, I never got to hear this on the radio. So I have to go back through the old YouTube videos, things like that to really get these calls. But, so I don't have that sentiment of growing up listening to the radio. But just listening to him play, some of his play calls, the pessimism, but the inclusion to me was what made Larry so great. You're sitting there and he just spoke it, and he spoke to you as a entire group. It wasn't like, oh, Oregon did this. Now he's like, we're doing this. So you have that feel that he's a part of the fans, right? But then you also got the pessimism. He's like, hunker down, that raspy.
One more time, Georgia.
The sugar falling from the sky, Now my question to you is this: we could talk about Larry all day. I could do an episode about Larry. My question is this: when it comes to Oregon, who is that voice for y'all? I'm curious because, look, those make memories that make you fans of your team and just have that moment. And I don't know how it is for Pac-12 or anything, but I'm sure it's got to be same.
Definitely. So there's one play that Oregon fans point to that really changed the entire tide of the Oregon program. Really, it was in 1994. We were playing Washington at home. At the time, Washington was national power, and a pick six sealed the game for us with Kenny Wheaton. And that call was made by Jerry Allen, who's still our guy today. The way you guys were talking about Munson, that's exactly who Jerry is too. He's kind of off the wall sometimes, but he makes it happen. And yeah, the Kenny Wheaton's going to score call. Once we get off this, you got to go on YouTube and just Google Kenny Wheaton, the pick we call it. That's the play for us, and that call especially is exactly what encapsulates kind of the emotion of the moment. So Jerry is a legendary announcer. He's been doing it for 30, 40 years now, something like that, Reid?
Yeah. I don't know when he started exactly, but you're right on. That 94 call is the one. And as Washington fans know, we've been dominating them ever since. 15 of the last 17 now. So
there you go.
Yep.
Guys, look, we're going to wrap this. Yep. Hey, we're going to wrap this thing up for the video guys too. Look, hey, like I said, it was a pleasure having you on. Thanks for sticking around for Q&A and story time. And looking forward to keeping up with Oregon and keeping up with your guys' work on 3. And I like On 3. It's kind of a blooming site, right? It's not your rivals. It's not your 24/7. So you have your diehards that are so set on those, right? So if you're on, On 3 is a good site. It's kind of created by the guys from rivals, but it's its own entity now. So it's definitely an up and coming thing that's established, but it's has to build that fan the fan base and everything else. Which it's going to come, right? It's coming. So,
and Scoop Duck specifically as well has been around for years, way before On 3 was even a thing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, because Dogs HQ for us, they took Gamecock Central, things like this, to establish,
Yeah.
And just included them with On3 for content. So, that's so like I said, On3 is new, but the sites, whether it be Oregon or Georgia, the content creators, those entities have been around for a while. So the names. It's just now their affiliation is different. So you look around, right? You're already better than ESPN anyway, right? So they really need to change the composite for people that look at 27 to get rid of ESPN and just focus on 3. It'd be nice. But that's not my job. That's above my pay grade. Josh Pate, if you're listening. With that being said, though, guys, we're going to wrap this thing up. Like I said, it was a pleasure having y'all on. You're welcome anytime. But look, it's going to be fun September 3rd, whether you're back on before then or not. It's going to be fun to watch the Oregon. It's going to be fun to watch that game in Atlanta. And with that being said, have a great weekend, everybody. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Thanks for having us.